The email my son was never supposed to read. Sometimes the loudest screams are the ones that are never heard. We often believe that the truth is what people say to our faces, but usually the truth is hidden in the things they delete, the letters they burn, and the drafts they never send. We build our lives on the stories our parents tell us, but what happens when the foundation of that story is a lie? What happens when a son discovers that his happy childhood was actually a carefully constructed stage play designed to hide a tragedy? James stood in the center of his father's study. The room smelled of old paper, polished mahogany, and the faint, lingering scent of expensive cigars. It was the smell of success. It was the smell of a life that looked perfect from the outside. His father, Robert, had passed away 3 weeks ago, joining James's mother, Mary, who had died 5 years prior. Now, at 40 years of age, James was the sole heir to a considerable fortune. He had the house, the investments, and the legacy. Yet, as he stood in that silent room, he did not feel like a winner. He felt like a stranger in his own history. His task for the day was simple. He needed to clear out the old electronics. There was a stack of devices in the corner, gathering dust. Among them was his mother's old laptop. It was a heavy silver machine that she had used for years. James remembered seeing her type on it at the kitchen table. She would always smile when he walked in and closed the lid. He had assumed she was planning holidays or buying gifts. He had never asked what she was writing. He wished he had asked. He plugged the laptop into the wall outlet. The screen flickered to life. It was slow, struggling to load the operating system of a bygone era. James felt a heavy wave of nostalgia. He saw the background image. It was a picture of him when he was 10 years old, standing on a beach, laughing. His mother had loved that photo. He decided to look through her documents, expecting to find recipes or digital photo albums. He clicked on the email application. It opened to her inbox, which was full of spam and old receipts. But then, his mouse hovered over the drafts folder. There was one email there. It was dated 15 years ago. The subject line consisted of a single word, Robert. James hesitated. His heart began to beat a little faster. He knew he should not read it. It was private. But the date on the email stopped him. That was the year James had graduated from university. It was the year his parents had renewed their wedding vows in a lavish ceremony in Italy. Everyone had said they were the perfect couple. Curiosity overcame his respect for privacy. He clicked the email. The text was long. It was not just a note. It was a manifesto of pain. The email was addressed to his father. Mary had written that she could not do it anymore. She described a loneliness that was so profound it made James's chest ache. She wrote that the big house, the cars, and the social status were not a blessing, but a golden cage. She explained that for 20 years, she had played the role of the dutiful wife, smiling for the cameras and hosting the dinner parties, while inside, she was slowly dying. She wrote that Robert's coldness was worse than any physical blow. She described how he would look right through her, as if she were a piece of furniture he had grown tired of. But then the email shifted. Mary began to write about James. She wrote that she had stayed for the boy. She had stayed because she wanted James to have the best schools and the best opportunities. She did not want to break his heart. But then she brought up a memory. She asked Robert if he remembered the night of the thunderstorm when James was 7 years old. James froze. He remembered that night. Or at least he thought he did. In his mind, it was a vague nightmare. He remembered thunder. He remembered hiding. The email continued. Mary wrote that it was not the thunder that had scared James. She reminded Robert that he had come home late, smelling of a strange perfume and alcohol. She detailed how Robert had not hit her, but he had systematically destroyed the living room in a silent, terrifying rage. He had shattered vases and ripped paintings from the walls, all without screaming, just breathing heavily. She wrote that James had witnessed it all from the top of the stairs. She described how James had run to the guest room closet and buried himself under a pile of winter coats. She wrote that when she finally found him, he was shaking so violently that he could not speak. She wrote that James had looked at her with eyes that were too old for a child and asked if Daddy was going to break them too. James stopped reading. The memory crashed into his mind with the force of a physical blow. It was not a nightmare. It was real. He could suddenly smell the wool of the winter coats. He could feel the terror of the dark closet. He could hear the shattering of glass downstairs. For 30 years, he had suppressed this. He had convinced himself that his father was a gentle, if distant, man. He had convinced himself that his anxiety and his inability to trust women in his own relationships were just personal flaws. He looked back at the screen. The email went on. Mary wrote that she had soothed James that night and told him it was just a game. She had gaslighted her own son to protect his image of his father. She wrote that she hated herself for that lie. She stated that she was writing this email to tell Robert that she was leaving him the next morning. She was going to take James, who was an adult now, and tell him the truth. She was going to file for divorce. James looked at the date again. The email was never sent. It remained in the drafts folder. He sat back in the heavy leather chair. He tried to piece together what had happened. Why did she not send it? Then he remembered. 2 days after that date, his mother had been diagnosed with the illness that would eventually take her life 5 years later. She had received the bad news, and she had decided to stay. She had decided that she could not leave her husband while she was sick, or perhaps she feared she would lose the financial support she needed for her treatment. She had deleted her freedom to ensure her survival, and to ensure James did not have to watch her struggle in poverty. She had swallowed her truth. She had closed the laptop, put on her smile, and renewed her vows in Italy. She had played the part until the very end. James felt tears streaming down his face. He wept for the mother he thought he knew. He realized that her softness was not weakness. It was a fortress. She had absorbed the coldness of the house so that he could feel warmth. She had hidden the monster in the living room so that James could sleep at night. But he also felt a surge of anger. He was angry that he had been lied to. He realized that his own struggles with intimacy, his own fear of conflict, and his own tendency to run away from relationships stemmed from that night in the closet. He had learned that love meant silence. He had learned that peace meant hiding the broken glass. He looked at the cursor blinking at the end of the unsent email. It was a ghost of a life that could have been. James made a decision. He could not change the past. He could not save his mother from the cage she had died in. But he could save himself. He reached for his phone. He dialed the number of the woman he had been seeing, the woman he had been pushing away because he was afraid of getting too close. When she answered, her voice was surprised. James took a deep breath. He told her that he needed to talk. He told her that he did not want to hide anymore. He told her that he had a story to tell her, a story about a closet, a storm, and a letter that was never sent. He did not delete the email. He saved it. He saved it as a reminder that the truth must be spoken, even if your voice shakes. He realized that wealth is not about the money in the bank or the mahogany furniture in the study. True wealth is the ability to live an honest life without secrets and without the heavy burden of things left unsaid. He walked out of the study, leaving the dark room behind him, and stepped into the light of the hallway. For the first time in 40 years, the house did not feel cold. It just felt like a house, and he was finally free to leave it. This story reminds us that the sacrifices our parents make are often invisible to us until it is too late. It teaches us that silence can be a form of protection, but it can also be a prison. James learned that to move forward, he had to confront the pain of the past. But I want to hear from you. Have you ever discovered a family secret that completely changed the way you viewed your childhood or your parents?